I call them patch cables. What's the name? Can't remember the name of the connector. You can get all sorts of connectors.
Yeah.
These are really good for using breadboards and the pins on this sort of electronics. That's why they're pretty ubiquitous in electronic labs.
Could we just get a battery and do that to here?
Yep, you can do that to power this. Absolutely. Any other questions about what we've kind of rapidly covered today?
What was that thing that he said that we should never do? Because otherwise it will fry.
Yeah.
Look into the banks.
Ah, okay.
But if you,
Is there something that...
where you've got a 5-volt and ground lead, if you touch them both together, that's a short circuit, and all of the power will go straight in and out of the Arduino, and that's not good.
So this is a really stupid question, but if you're just like googling a 12-volt battery, like, how do you get one that's good for?
Well, those sealed batteries that any 12-volt battery will work. The thing to look for is its capacity, like milliamp hours or amp hours is the thing.
Otherwise, there's more.
So the amount, a battery holds a limited amount of power, and power is voltage times current. So a 12-volt battery always puts out 12 volts. So the capacity in amp hours is how many amps you take and for how long you take it. So if you're running a 12-watt motor at 12 volts, that's going to take 1 amp. That's going to take 1 amp. So if you take 1 amp for an hour, that's 1 amp hour. So for a 1 amp hour battery at 12 volts, you could run a 12-volt motor that takes 1 amp for an hour. The one that takes less current, you could run for longer. So it's about power, which is current times voltage. 12 volts is a nice voltage to use because an Arduino can use it, and so can lots of motors. 5 volts is good because lots of sensors and so on can use 5 volts.
I already had some.
Oh, yeah. Just drop this off, is it?
They're quite expensive.
Where are we going to do it? In this room?
Like
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
What was the brief again? Yeah, I might look back.
So
So that's have a look now.
That's so cool.
Something we can use.
for instance, sorry. So define the battery.
Oh, I think I know.
Oh.
No, sorry.
No.
I don't know what's coming. Sorry.
Sorry, just-
So I've phrased that into this.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's because you
sorry.
changed the software, isn't it? To do the serial thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was right. So how would you, like, what battery?
Well, you could use, are they all 12 volt batteries? Yeah. So, 12 volt, yes, you can get a 12 volt battery, and instead of plugging this in, you just have two wires going to the same place from the terminals of that battery. There's a Motability shop behind B&Q, and I've bought slightly knackered batteries for Motability scooters because they're 12 volts. And they've got enough capacity to run one of these for days, and there's some for a fire or something like that. They're a bit old and knackered, so you can't run a Motability scooter off them anymore, but you get
Okay, so for
fairly cheap
instance,
batteries from there.
like this, you would literally, you just
Yeah,
like solder
yeah, well,
a wire
I would
onto
probably
this,
use
like a
a,
little crocodile clip,
yeah, literally just connect those
connect it on.
just
Okay.
like that.
Okay, cool.
It's not working because the software has changed.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
going to say-
And that can power, so if I want to use a servo to hit a symbol,
12 volts will give you quite a lot of bumps and
First
in
time
a-
something
in
that
a,
even with the, because I have one,
repeat.
Wow.
I have one that came with the kit.
Spinal forms to make,
Ah, what are
Cogs.
those?
and but actually
That one.
cut them. I was actually going to get vinyl records, you know,
Yeah.
like vinyl records.
so I'd start by looking at your data sheet.
Stretch it out. Actually,
This might
Yeah.
take, this might be a 5 volt.
Yeah.
Me?
So I can get a
Yeah.
servo.
No, I was just going to get a Stanley
Yeah.
approach and just try doing
Yes.
that really. Pulling it
Also
out.
with this.
So
So
high
therefore,
voltage
yeah.
gives you the ability to shove more
Well,
power
not
over
really. Yeah, it's been nice to be able to kind of experiment with those.
amps are quite,
Okay.
weighing quite heavy.
It would be cool if, it would be crazy if you could bring it up.
Maybe I'll try with that. See if
Like
it's
a
powerful.
harmonium
Yeah.
thing, yeah.
Get a
Harmonium, accordion.
I mean, you could even have something that opens the gate and lets all bearings fall down on the cymbal or something like that.
Yeah,
So
using
thinking-
gravity,
I'm
yeah.
thinking wider about the mechanism. It doesn't have to be all done by the actuators. The actuators can cause other things to happen. You can move a lever and all sorts of stuff. You can pump water up that trickles down onto the, I don't know.
So what I meant is a kind of like a hand that moves, that can move around and like, just on the floor. You know, like those like little automatic hoovers.
Oh, yes.
You did that. They look like little cider mats.
Mhm.
Things like that. And the spiral thing is actually, she saying it's a really good idea. That it could, so not as a flat thing, but as a cut around. So this is not the thing that's got to be made, but that it is kind of this high and that it can turn, or that actually if it can go.
I'm imagining a threaded rod.
Yeah.
And so as the motor turned, the thread went up, down, the threaded.
Oh, because even if it
Could
could
go-
go like
That might
that,
be interesting.
yeah, that would be. Is that really complicated?
No, I don't think necessarily so. It depends on what your fabrication skills are like.
Well, zero. But I've got the ideas, but no, perhaps not the. But I don't know. I mean, is that the idea that we fit all these two things together? I mean, that's
Definitely,
you know, so I've got my own
definitely.
agenda there.
Mm.
I've got
Yeah, no,
ideas
but
that come in from my own. But I
that's
thought
great.
it'd be cool that.
No, that's great. Yeah. I think we can Skillshare as well and fabricate each other's
It'd
things.
be quite useful as well
Yeah.
if we're all using different sensors and different outputs, so that then in the future if we want to do like a different one, then like you'll have used a motor, so then that's like really handy.
Yeah,
if
yeah,
that makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
It's like a little mechanical orchestra, really.
Yeah.
Isn't it? And we've got
Yeah.
lights, sound, smooth motion, and water.
Water.
Four elements of wind and fire.
Yeah.
No, you know.
We just need fire,
Do
yeah.
we want some
Yeah,
fire?
no, give me fire. Come on, Kat. That's
It
what
means
we need to do.
electricity and fire. And water.
Actually, yeah, that's a real
You're
combo.
maxing out the danger levels.
So,
I accidentally exploded all my lights, I think.
so if it was a vibration sensor, would I just Google
Yeah, Arduino
vibration sensor?
Ah, they're coming back.
Is it happening?
So did that one work with just the...
No.
It didn't.
Just need to
We've got some more.
upload the
I
software.
have.
So we have. Turn it back on.
Ah, hey! Cool.
So that's independent.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So this is, yeah, literally...
Maybe it just needs
That is
refreshing.
a long way. You're crossing the road. Takes
So-
a long time.
So it's always green.
Yeah.
And I come along and be like, I want to cross the road.
Yeah.
So I hit that arrow.
Yeah.
That's so nice that it's like
Yeah.
free of
Yeah,
the computer.
exactly.
And so instead of this,
Mhm.
you would just have a
So
battery.
this was the...
Put the plus terminal in there,
Yeah.
the negative terminal in there, and then you're not connected to anything.
Cool. Okay.
I also could be completely, although I love it. But
Cool.
There's a shock sensor in here. What's this one? This is my reference box. And,
Did the kit come with this box?
Sorry?
It's like this box, did you get that with the kit?
no, I bought this separately,
It's very
and
tiny.
it comes with its nicely labelled thing, and then I bought this box, which is the same thing but without the labels.
Yeah.
Kind of use this as the lookup box, and then you can find it in here.
So this is a shock sensor, you said? So that senses vibration?
If you kick it, it would go, yes, I've been kicked.
Ah, but could it sense vibration next to it?
Yep, I believe so. It depends. Again, it depends how it's mechanically connected to the, how shaky is the thing that you're vibrating. So if you've got a massive block of granite,
Yeah.
it's not going to sense some fingers tickling. But if it's tissue paper, the shock sensor is going to get a lot more movement.
So if it's a ceramic object, what kind of movement sensor could it have?
Depends how hard you hit it.
But ideally not. Ideally you can just, like Leon's hand would crawl past it and then it would know that.
Not sure really. Yeah, you could put some copper strip on the floor, and if metal wheels went over it, that could make a connection, and that could be a sensor. You could use an infrared tripwire kind of thing. So you've got an infrared torch over here and an infrared sensor over there, or a light sensor and a torch that's interrupted. There's all sorts of ways you could do something. If something went past, or through a tripwire, a light tripwire, your porcelain could sense it. Pressure sensitive, that might be, your hand might not be heavy enough. All sorts of possible ways. Kind of, so you have to think about the mechanism, the interaction behaviours, the senses, all of it, all in the round somehow. So there's not an easy single answer. That's the point. You kind of have to design this thing together as well as independently have your own individual part. So if you know roughly what your individual part is,
Yeah.
you can sort of define the interfaces between them. So collectively agree that I will produce a squirt of water. What are you going to do with that? And you're going to create a cymbal crash. What are you going to do with that? Well, I'm going to listen for that. And when I hear your cymbal crash, I'm going to squirt some water. And then once you know how you're going to interact, then you can go back into your own individual focus, knowing that you have to deliver that and listen to that.
So if it was responding to the symbol crash, what sensor would it be so that it
A microphone, I guess. You could put that vibration sensor on the cymbal if that worked.
Yeah.
You could put a trip wire just above the cymbal, so when it crashed, it switched the trip wire. If it was a metal beater, that could be the switch. You could have a connector on the cymbal and the switch, so when the beater hit the cymbal, it made a connection that you sensed and did what you did.
So for instance, if this is on the symbol, then it would need like two really long wires. That would then go all the way to like where the object, the ceramic object is.
That would be likely to work, but there's a bit of experimentation going on, because if the wire is really long, maybe the resistance of that wire might make that, it might be too long for the Arduino to listen to. It should be, right? I would say it's worth a try. But maybe you have to be next to the symbol because you need to listen to it.
I think I guess if we all come to the next session with our individual things and knowing what other people are bringing, then our troubleshooting on the final session will be trying to get them to how close or how far they need to be. It's kind of like setting up an exhibition, but not just thinking about space and someone moving through it, but then each other sensing each other.
Yeah. But the alternative to you listening for the cymbal crash, or certainly in some ways, is to use that serial connection. Because your Arduino knows when the cymbal's crashing, but at the same time you can say, my cymbal's crashed, do your thing. So you could synchronise it in that way rather than through the physical actuated environment.
What triggers the sound of your cymbal?
I don't know yet.
Not like a water fountain.
Could potentially. I want to get some of those soil, what were they? The soil humidity sensors.
Moisture sensors.
Moisture sensors. So, but then I think they have.
Slow, wouldn't it?
That's that's what I'm about to say. That's quite slow.
Yeah, you might not actually. Yeah, I mean I don't know, but
I guess if you had a very tiny plant with a tiny amount of, if it was very small, maybe the humidity would change quite rapidly if water was added to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it was a huge pot, I'm sure it would take a definitely something to. So yeah, I'm not sure what my sensor should be. It could be just a trip sensor. It would be simple. You walk past the symbol and it dings at you. You send us like a proximity sensor. I suppose you could use that. So as you got closer to it, moved more rapidly. And then if the further you're away from it, the slower. So then I guess it doesn't have to sense another thing within the network, but it could just be someone in the room.
It could be the proximity of a person or a hand,
Yeah.
or something else, depending on where you point it. And the PIR sensor comes into it as well. I'm sure I swore there was a proximity sensor in here.
And is that with the infrared? Or no? What's the proximity sensor?
That looks like there's a board. I'm exaggerating the size of it, but there are two cylinders on it like this, and this one sends out an ultrasonic beam and it hits something and comes back.
Oh cool, so that doesn't need body heat?
No, and it works out. It knows when it's sent out, and it knows when it receives it, and it divides by the same.
So that could work with the hand thing, yeah?
Depending on the size of the hand, and if it
Yeah.
reflected ultrasonic things,
Proximity sensor.
Where is it?
It's the size of the hand, it's just my
It would make noise, right?
I'm going to make them again, like proper stuffing and stuff. It's just like a prototype, really.
Ooh, you're doing a lot.
That's going to take forever. It'll be really ambitious thing.
That's good.
you can see there's some examples of.
Millions to do. Clear and push on a machine.
So that's an example of the two-wheeled thing with a roller kind of thing at the front. You could